Okay, so tonight I decided to make a Caruso family favorite, Escarole and Beans. Now, some of you may call this stuff escarole. This is what I bought at the farmer's market on Saturday. We call it escarole because my Italian American grandmother was raised to call it this, and that's what we all call it. And it's funny how, Phil and I don't speak Italian. Unfortunately, we never learned. My dad didn't really learn Italian, but my grandparents spoke Italian, and they picked up all these like Italian ways of saying things. So instead of escarole, it was escarola, and to us it became scarole. So it's just a word to us. So it's just kind of funny that Phil and I will slip into saying these things, but I know it must sound funny to other people, but in my head, this will always be Escarole and Beans. So that's what I'm making. I'm looking out at our backyard. It's really windy and it's chilly. It's probably around 60, but it's been kind of overcast all day and I've been a little bit chilly in my office. So of course I think of soup and I'm like, oh, I don't have any soup made. But I knew that I had bought this escarole at the market on Saturday, last Saturday. And so I was like, oh, I can make escarole and beans really quickly. And I'm alone tonight, and a nice big bowl of steamy escarole and beans sounds so good to me right now. So that's what I'm doing, and I thought, yeah, I'll just make it and share it with you guys. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was our almond parm, which you guys hear me talking about this all the time. This is our almond parm little container that I always put it in because I just 1, 2, 3 put everything in here and shake it up. Everybody in the house knows that this is my almond parm little holder. So this I have in my fridge all the time. And this stuff, I'll use this on Friday night for our pizzas. I just add it to all my salads. I make the Caesar vinaigrette all the time. That's one of my favorites. That's in the Kickstart and in the meal plan in your recipe box. It's so delicious, and there's no oil in that one. Well, there's no oil in anything, but I meant to say there's no nuts and seeds already in the recipe for those of you who watched the Healthy Fats. And so this is made with almond flour. So just a little sprinkling of this brings out the flavor. I just love it with this. Yeah, I just put this on everything. Any roasted veg that I have. But for sure we'll be having it on our pizza on Friday. That's like the superstar for pizzas. I'm tired. I am messing up my words here. It's been a long day. I'm feeling a little tired right now. Okay, so I sort of prepped everything. I washed the escarole. I have 2 cans of white beans, and the recipe calls for 1 can drained and 1 can undrained. So we've been making this for years. My grandma taught my mom taught me and Phil. But the funny thing is we do not use recipes in my family. So there were no recipes for anything. It was a little of this, a little of that, a shake of this, add red pepper, taste, add more salt. So that's how we cook. So I'm really not used to following recipes. I am now because for the last 3 years, we have been creating these recipes. And what we do now is we take, the way my mom taught us how to make this, and we have to measure everything. So we want for you guys to have set recipes so it tastes just as good as how we make it. So I kept making it different ways and a little more of this. And I think I was the one who came up with the undrained can of beans. I don't know. I'm not sure how my mom makes it, but this was my favorite way. So every time I make it now, I use my own recipe because I want to maybe tweak it or, make sure it's good. And I haven't made this probably since last year around this time. No, I'm sure I made it over the winter a couple times. But I'm saying we cook so much and I make new recipes. I make our traditional family favorites all the time. I just can't remember how it tasted exactly the last time. I know that all the recipes are really, really good and I worked really hard at making them taste great, but I'm getting comments even, all the time, well, it maybe needed a little of this or a little of that. And you know, we are so open to that. We want your feedback. Someone today posted about the pumpkin bread. It was like, oh, it was missing something. You know, and I know that's subjective. Someone else might think it was, you know, too spiced, or it just depends on your spices. Everything is going to change slightly. So if I heard, you know, 10 people say, yeah, it's really missing something, I'll work hard on that. I will fix it and change it. But if I have mixed feelings, like it's perfect, don't change anything, and maybe it's missing something, you know, maybe I'll just let it sit, and you know, you can play with it a little bit your own to your own taste. But I really am listening to all the comments, and I'm going to work hard on the ones that really need some adjusting. So that's why every time I make especially one of our, well, all of our recipes, I should say, but this is a family recipe, I'll still make it according to my recipe. I'm pointing to my laptop, which has the recipe over there, because I want to make sure, you know, I already know it's good, but I just, you know, maybe I could tweak it a touch. So that's why I'm following a recipe, my own recipe. Okay, so I would typically peel this garlic. So it calls for 8 cloves of garlic. Now that sounds like a lot, but the garlic really is key in this. It adds a ton of flavor, and I just like a lot of garlic. So I don't think it's too garlicky. I remember that. But that is one thing I want to keep in mind, because even for me, I'm like, 8 cloves of garlic. Whoa. So I'm going to check that out. But what I wanted to show you, so even though I said 8 cloves, now, whenever we say garlic, a clove of garlic, I mean a nice size clove. You know how garlic can change, especially this organic garlic. I don't know if you're getting a good perspective on this or not. It doesn't really look like it. It looks pretty big. But like a nice size clove. Now this organic garlic, let me grab one. You can get these like little tiny cloves, you know, and that's gonna alter the taste. If I say 2 cloves of garlic and you have 2 tiny little things, that's gonna be lacking in some flavor, I would think. So I would say use 2 of those as 1. You know, you always want, when we say garlic, to have a nice size clove. Now this one came from the same organic head, is kind of a monster. I mean, that's too nice size. So for this, I'm not gonna use 8, I'm gonna use 7, because I have 6 that are really like the perfect size, and then I have this big guy. So I'm just gonna use 7. And so this time what I'm gonna test is, since I have so many, I'm gonna try putting it in my mini food processor, because I don't know, I love to mince garlic, but oops, that's a lot of mincing. So I'm gonna go do that right now and edit that part out. I'll be right back. Okay, that worked perfectly. I mean, it's all stuck to the sides, but wow. That was a good idea, I have to say, because all that mincing, that would have taken me a long time. Okay, I love this mini food processor, even though mine is kind of on its last leg. It's cracked, and I don't know, one side doesn't really work that well, but look at that. I love that. Okay, that's ready now. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this on, and I'm gonna dry saute my garlic, which means I'm going to not use any oil. We don't cook with oil, so I'm gonna heat up that pan, pot, Dutch oven, and then I'm just gonna put all this garlic in there. So this is like medium high, and you never want garlic to burn, because that is not a good thing. I would have to start over. If this burned, I would toss it and have to start right over, and that would be a shame, because that's 7 nice cloves of garlic. And then I'm gonna watch it carefully with my water here. So medium low heat, I'm just gonna I'm gonna give it a splash, because we're not trying to brown it here, we just want it to soften. We want it to soften a bit before we add anything else. So just gonna let that cook for a couple minutes. I'm gonna check the recipe. I wanna make sure, Cook for a few minutes until fragrant, adding more water if necessary to prevent sticking. Exactly what I thought. Okay. So, oh, that smells so good already. Okay, and so the other things I have prepared are, I just put, it's salt, crushed red pepper flakes, and some black pepper. I just put it all together there. And then it's 8 cups of water, so I got those ready so I don't have to measure those out. And that is it. And so the greens go in last because we really just want to wilt the greens. I just washed this. I did not cut off the stems. I mean, I cut off the base. But I'm just wondering, do we cut these down a little bit? Probably, but I kind of like how they wilt. I like having big spoonfuls of greens. So I didn't really want to cut them up. I'm just going to see what the recipe says. It says 2 heads escarole, rinsed, stems removed, and torn into pieces. Okay, I will tear these into pieces a little bit more. Okay, I think that's good. I mean, I might just eat this all myself. Like I said, Frank's out tonight. It's just me. I will not eat this whole pot of soup. But I will have it for lunch tomorrow because you know soup gets better with time. It is so good the next day. And it is gonna be so nice to have this for lunch tomorrow because I think it's gonna be cold again. I mean chilly, not cold. Chicago. I should still be appreciating 60-degree weather, but now it feels cold. Okay, see, that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to let the garlic burn. It didn't burn. It's just sticking. Okay, so now I'm going to add the beans. So I'm going to add the drained beans and the undrained beans with the bean juice. That gives it a lot of flavor. Let's make sure I get all the beans here. The recipe probably says to add the spices. Let me see. Yeah, add the spices too. So that's just salt, pepper, and red pepper flakes. How easy is this? I love that I thought of that mini food processor. That just makes this so easy. Okay, so now what we're doing, the beans are already cooked because they're from the can, but we just want to cook them down so they soften and break apart so they're not all whole. It just makes it so nice and luscious where some of the beans are not mashed, but like broken down, and it thickens the soupy part. Okay, so, oh, I didn't add the water. Bring to a simmer over medium heat and cook for 20 minutes. Okay, I'm glad that I'm reading this. I want to get this right for you guys because I know it's going to be delicious. Almost forgot the water. Okay. Bring to a simmer. I'm just going to turn that up a little. Okay, we're going to wait for that to simmer. I'm going to cook it for 20 minutes and then I'm going to show you what it looks like. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes and the beans are softening and breaking down a little bit. It still looks really soupy. It should be a little bit thicker than this when we're all done, but I can tell that the beans are breaking down and getting nice and soft. So now I'm gonna add the escarole. This looks like a lot, and it is, but I'm just gonna, can you see what I'm doing? Just gonna add all of this. That's why you wanna start with a nice big pot here. Just gonna add all of it in, and then push it down a little bit, and then the recipe says crack the lid. I think I'm just gonna, yeah, because see, you can't really stir it. So if you leave it like that with the lid cracked for 5 minutes, then it kind of just wilts down a little bit. Then we're gonna uncover it and cook it for another 10 minutes while stirring it, just so, you know, it all kind of wilts down. This is funny, I was thinking about this. This was considered a depression dish, and I know my grandma had 5 kids, and think about what this cost to open a couple of cans of beans and greens and garlic. Basically, that's all it is. And she had to feed a family of 7, and this was probably just a nice, easy way. And think about how nutritious it is. Escarole and all those nutrients in the greens, and then you have beans, and then you have garlic. I mean, I'm not surprised that you know, my grandparents lived into their 80s. I mean, they ate, you know, organic vegetables. I feel like they didn't have fast food back then. You know, I just feel like there wasn't a lot of, that was way before processed food came along, highly processed food came along. So there's gotta be something to that. So even though it's like depression dishes and they had basic staples, you know, this is how they ate. And I know from everything I've read and studied, like the rich ate meat, you know, the poor ate potatoes and beans. They couldn't afford the meat. So who was healthier? The poor people, the people that lived on beans and rice and grains and vegetables and potatoes. I should ask my Uncle Billy, you know, how much meat he remembers eating. He's in his 80s now, but my dad passed away in 2005, so I can't ask him. But I really would like to know, you know, how much meat they ate back then. And I know all the dishes. I have them in my head. Like another one we have on our site is pasta lindique, which is pasta and lentils. We call it pasta lindique. That's just another one. And think about it, the lentils, you know, that was sort of like the meat, the protein, the hardiness. And it's funny to me that we are like full circle gone back to creating those recipes. Instead of the cheese, we use our nut cheese to make it even better. And yeah, it was considered a depression dish because of it was inexpensive to cook a lot of food for a lot of people at a low cost. Okay, so now I am able to stir it and mix it all together. I'm just mixing it up, and then push it down a little bit. I'm gonna let that cook down for about 10 minutes, and I'm just gonna stir it every now and then just to kind of wilt it down. That's all we want to do. And you don't want the greens to cook too much because then they get kind of mushy. So you just want them nice and wilted and the beans to be all soft and kind of mushy. And we're gonna add some of this stuff and it's gonna be great. Look at how beautifully green the escarole got. It's so beautiful. And now the recipe says to add 1/3 cup of our almond parm. So I'm gonna add that in there and then just mix it all up. Look at that. Adding a cheesiness, and I actually tasted it before I started filming again, and to me it tasted like it needed a little salt, and I was thinking of adjusting the recipe a tiny bit, but then I remembered that the almond parm has salt in it and it adds a saltiness, so I didn't want to add any more salt to the recipe until I tried it with that in it. So let's try it. Okay, I'm gonna take a bunch of greens because I want to fill my bowl up with those powerful greens, and then I'm gonna take some of the beans and some of the soup, maybe a little more greens, the soup. Ooh, it got nice and creamy. Let's see if you can see that without me pouring it all over the place. It is steamy hot though. So I'm gonna take a little taste. Okay, I'll show you this in a close-up after I taste it. Yummy. Got really creamy. It's so good. Okay, so what I would do to mine, and then serve it with the extra almond parm on the side, because I am gonna add a little bit more. I like mine a little hot, like I like everything a little hot, so I'm gonna put some crushed red pepper in there, and then I'm gonna add a little bit more, or a lot of bit more. Look at the soup. Oh my goodness, it is so good. And think about what I'm about to put in my body. All these delicious greens, beans, garlic. Nutritional yeast even has some B12, vitamin B12. It's a bowl of yumminess. It's so good. I get excited over food, and this is so good. You guys, meal planners, make this. Kickstarters, it's not in the Kickstart, but for the rest of you in the group who would like to make this, say so in the comments and we'll put it in the newsletter. I'm not sure right now if it's a free recipe or not. I tend to think it isn't. Maybe it is. I will check before I post and I will let you know. But if it's not, tell us you want it and we will put it in the newsletter as one of our Friday free or Tuesday newsletter free recipes. It's amazing. Thanks, Grandma C.